Hey everyone, tonight we're exploring something dark, calculated, and absolutely fascinating. We're talking about what happened when ancient empires captured queens and female rulers. Before we dive in, take a second to like this video if you enjoy this kind of content, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I always love seeing our global community. Now get comfortable, maybe grab some tea, turn down those lights, and let's journey back to a time when capturing a queen meant something far more complex than simply taking a prisoner. The problem of a captured queen. When an empire conquered a kingdom and took its queen captive, they weren't just dealing with another prisoner of war. They had captured a symbol. Queens represented legitimacy, bloodlines, and the very concept of independent authority. You couldn't just throw them in a cell and forget about them like an ordinary soldier. Empires understood something crucial about power. A defeated queen was dangerous not because she could pick up a sword and fight, but because people had believed in her. Soldiers follow orders out of duty. Subjects follow queens out of conviction. And conviction doesn't die just because a battle was lost. This created a unique challenge. Execute her immediately, and she becomes a martyr. Songs get written, stories spread, rebellions ignite around her memory. Keep her alive and comfortable, and she remains a rallying point for resistance. The solution empires developed was something far more calculated than simple imprisonment or quick execution. The spectacle of defeat. Ancient empires, particularly Rome, perfected the art of using captured royalty as propaganda tools. The triumph, Rome's victory parade, was theater designed to break spirits and reshape narratives. When a captured queen was paraded through the streets, every detail was intentional. She would be dressed in foreign garments that emphasized her otherness. Sometimes she wore symbols of her former power, crowns or royal jewelry, but now they served a different purpose. They reminded spectators of what had been taken away. The contrast between her diminished state and the victorious general riding high on his chariot told a story without words. Crowds numbered in the tens of thousands. Their role was to witness, to gossip, to spread the tale far beyond the city walls. A queen humiliated publicly sent ripples across the known world. Other rulers watched and calculated their own odds of survival. What made this particularly cruel was the timing. Triumphs didn't happen immediately after capture. Weeks or months might pass, sometimes years. The queen waited, knowing what was coming but powerless to prevent it. Anticipation sharpened the punishment before it even began. Children as weapons. If empires wanted to make their dominance absolutely unmistakable, they included the queen's children in the spectacle. This wasn't accidental cruelty, though cruelty was certainly present. It was strategic messaging. A queen walking in chains could inspire sympathy or defiance. A queen dragging her children through public humiliation became something else entirely. She transformed into a cautionary tale about the cost of resistance. The message was clear. Rebellion doesn't just destroy you, it destroys your legacy. For the watching crowds, this demonstrated total victory. No heirs waiting in exile to reclaim the throne. No future generation plotting revenge. The story ended here, in this street, in front of everyone. The children themselves faced various fates. Some were adopted into families of the conquering empire, raised to forget their origins and serve their former enemies. Others disappeared into obscurity, their names changed, their histories erased. A few were kept alive as political leverage, insurance against future uprisings from their homeland. This practice revealed something chilling about imperial logic. Empires didn't just want to win wars. They wanted to eliminate the possibility of future wars by severing the bloodlines that could challenge them. The prison of irrelevance. Not all captured queens faced immediate spectacle. Some experienced something arguably worse: survival without purpose. Empires learned that a living, powerless queen could be more useful than a dead one. These women were housed in controlled environments. Not dungeons with chains and darkness, but guarded villas or temple complexes. From the outside, it might look almost comfortable. That was intentional. Visible comfort allowed the empire to claim moral superiority while quietly dismantling the queen's authority.
The real prison wasn't the walls. It was isolation. Queens were separated from advisors, supporters, and anyone who might remind them of who they once were. Communication was monitored. Letters vanished. Visitors were screened or forbidden entirely. Then came routine. Endless, mind-numbing routine. No decisions to make. No orders to give. No audience to address.
For someone raised to command, routine became a form of psychological erosion. Each identical day stripped away another layer of identity. Uncertainty amplified the torture. Queens were rarely told their fate. Would they be executed tomorrow? Next year? Never? The lack of information was deliberate. Hope without direction becomes anxiety, and anxiety is exhausting. Empires outsourced much of their punishment to the human mind itself. Strategic survival. When empires chose to keep a queen alive long-term, it was never mercy. It was calculation. A breathing, visible, thoroughly powerless former ruler sent clearer messages than an execution ever could. Her people couldn't rally around a martyr if she was still alive, especially if she was seen as broken, compliant, or irrelevant. Hope fades faster when the symbol of resistance remains present but impotent. These queens became living warnings. Their existence could be mentioned casually in negotiations with other kingdoms. "You know what happened to her," was often enough to discourage ambitious rulers considering resistance. From the queen's perspective, this long survival was its own form of death. Each day erased another piece of who she had been. No court, no authority, no voice, just existence without influence. Empires understood that for rulers accustomed to command, the most satisfying punishment wasn't death. It was watching power fade slowly, one quiet day at a time. The quiet end. When execution finally came, it was rarely public. The performance had already happened during the triumph or through years of captivity. What remained was administration. Most executions were deliberately private. No crowds, no final speeches, no dramatic closure. Strangulation was common because it was efficient, quiet, and left no remains to inspire devotion. Timing mattered enormously. Executions were delayed until the empire had extracted every possible benefit. The queen lived only as long as she was useful. Once she became irrelevant, the empire moved on with administrative calm. There was no ceremony, no chance to reclaim dignity, no final resistance, just the quiet realization that the waiting had ended and the empire had decided she was no longer necessary. For the world outside, the lack of drama mattered. There was no public execution to mark the moment, no clear ending, just silence, rumors, and eventual forgetting. Erasure, the final punishment. Sometimes the harshest punishment wasn't death, but disappearance from memory itself. Empires controlled not just territories, but narratives. Historians, poets, and officials rewrote the stories of captured queens. Leadership became arrogance in these retellings. Strategy became recklessness. Resistance became madness or delusion. These women were rarely described as competent rulers who posed genuine threats. That would imply the empire faced legitimate opposition. Instead, they were portrayed as emotional, impulsive, or doomed by their own excessive ambition. The implication was clear. Their rule was always unstable, their defeat inevitable. Because empires controlled education and written records, these portrayals spread and hardened into accepted history. Future generations assumed these queens were minor figures because the empire's version of events was the only one that survived. Names were misspelled, minimized, or omitted entirely. Queens who had commanded armies became footnotes. Monuments were never built in their honor. Their place in time was steadily erased. This was punishment extending beyond death. These women didn't just lose their thrones, their freedom, or their lives. They lost their place in history. And for an empire obsessed with permanence, that was the ultimate victory. The message to the world. Empires never punished captured queens for the queen's own sake. That would have been pointless. Every chain, every parade, every carefully timed disappearance was aimed outward at everyone else watching. The lesson was always the same. Resistance will not simply end in defeat. It will end in humiliation, erasure, and consequences that extend beyond your lifetime. Your children will suffer. Your memory will be distorted. Your name will become a warning. Other rulers observed and calculated. If they resisted, this was their future. Not a quick death in battle, but a slow dismantling of everything they were. The cruelty revealed something about imperial psychology. Empires tolerated enemies and even respected worthy opponents. What they couldn't tolerate were alternatives. A ruling queen embodied the uncomfortable possibility that power could exist outside their control, without their approval or institutions. What this reveals. The harsh treatment of captured queens tells us something profound. These women were punished so carefully precisely because they mattered. Empires don't waste energy humiliating insignificant opponents. Even the historical record betrays imperial anxiety. The need to belittle, distort, and diminish these women long after their deaths suggests fear beneath the confidence. If these queens were truly irrelevant, why spend centuries ensuring no one remembered them as legitimate rulers? And yet, despite everything, we still talk about them. Their stories survived, fragmented and distorted, but alive. Each remembered queen represents a crack in the imperial narrative of inevitability. The fate of captured queens wasn't about justice, mercy, or even revenge. It was about control extending beyond battlefields into identity, memory, and the very concept of legitimate authority. Empires won the wars and controlled the records, but they never fully controlled memory. And perhaps that's the final irony. The very women they worked so hard to erase became, through their treatment, impossible to forget. Thanks for watching tonight. If this made you think differently about ancient power structures, let me know in the comments. And remember, history isn't just what happened. It's also about what was deliberately hidden and why. Until next time, stay curious.